Thank you for coming this afternoon. I'm excited to talk about designing an agent-driven conference experience in Slack. Are you sick of hearing about Slack yet today? No? Good, because I'm not either. My name is Melissa Hill Dees. I have an MBA in digital entrepreneurship, which just means that I did an MBA and specifically focused on what it might be, to be a digital entrepreneur. I consider myself an entrepreneur anyway, because I'm left-handed, I'm redheaded, I think outside the box along different lines. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see occasionally I have hashtag extreme beta tester. So my ISV partners have told me that if I can't break it, then it's ready for GA. I am the co-founder of Nonprofit Dreamin', which is a Dreamin' event that is specifically targeted toward nonprofits instead of being a regional event. How many of you have been to any of the community conferences? Anybody been? They're great fun, not nearly as expensive as TDX, and you learn a lot. So I highly encourage you to attend. So what I want to talk to you today, just to give you a brief agenda overview of what we're going to talk about, a little bit of an introduction to this app, this experience, and why I built it. Why is my favorite word. How we designed the event inside the community, and the conversational AI is the interface. I do a lot of work with UX and UI. I'm always hesitant to say UI, because just because it's a user interface doesn't mean it's good UX. I'm sure you've all seen that. And then we'll try and do a live demo. You know how that goes. And then some closing thoughts, and I'm happy to take questions at the end if you'd like to ask. So, the problem with traditional apps. How many of you have attended a conference and you have to download a completely different app that you've never seen before, learn how it works, figure it out, exactly, right? So that was a little bit of the problem that we were having, and especially as community organizers. There's a specific app that I won't call by name that charges about $6,000 to use it for a 2-day event. And that's a lot for a community organizer who is all volunteer and doesn't have tons of funding, depending on how many sponsors they have. So what could we do that would not be a bought, paid, out-of-the-box kind of app? So that was kind of where we started. I attended Cactus Force, and a great developer and architect conference in Phoenix, Arizona every January. Again, if you haven't gone to that, I would highly recommend it. And luckily, I know the woman who is the organizer for that, Marisa Hamilton. And I flew into town. I had been crazy. I didn't know what was going on. I was late getting to the conference. And I texted her and I said, Marisa, where the heck am I supposed to be right now? I mean, that's all I needed to know. Just tell me where I need to be right this moment, and we'll be fine. And she said, if you'll go to the app and go to the tab and do this, and I was like, we ought to be able to build something, right? That you can literally say, where am I supposed to be, right? So that's kind of the premise of where we got started with this. So we started thinking about, how do we reframe this? How do we create an app that everybody already knows how to use? There's no learning curve involved. How many of you currently use Slack? Yeah? Great. So if we built it in Slack, there's no learning curve. You don't have to relearn something. It works on your phone. I mean, I have Slack on my desktop. I have it on my phone. It pops up on my watch. It's everywhere. So we really wanted to shift that perspective and think about how we could create an app that would work beautifully and well for the event itself. But then, you make friends at these events, you talk to people, and then you're like, how do I get back in touch with them, right? So if we could leave the Slack app open and available and there, you could continue to build those relationships, have the conversations that got started at the event that, changed and morphed and needed more conversations. So we started thinking about designing the event inside the community. And we started thinking about the core event jobs that needed to be done, right? So we kind of boiled it down to 5 basic premises, things that need to happen in an event app. And this is why when we have questions later, I'll probably ask you all, if you think of more, right? Because we did actually use this app that I'm going to show you for Nonprofit Dreamin' 3 weeks ago in Charlotte, North Carolina. Did it work perfectly? No. Are we going to iterate? Yes. So I'd love to have feedback from you all. So obviously the agenda navigation, right? So easy access to schedules and tracks. What do you want to attend? Do you want to see who's presenting what? One of my pet peeves at TDX and at Dreamforce has always been that they don't show the speaker name when you surface the name of the session itself. Have you noticed that? Because I attend sessions because of who's presenting it, not because of what the topic is, right? So I want to know. 3 years ago, I'm not even sure you could search by the speaker name. So that's one of the things in the community events especially, you want to be able to access not only when and where the sessions are going to be, but who's presenting those sessions, right? So speaker coordination. Luckily, Megan Barden was my speaker person for this event, and I was midstream with all of the things Nonprofit Dreamin' and paying absolutely no attention to emails or the Slack, the Salesforce Slack at all. And she kept reaching out to me to remind me, you need to turn this in, you need to get this done, you need to. So there's a lot of communication that goes on, right? I don't know if you've ever spoken, but you have to get the slide deck. You have, where is that? They send it to you in an email and they're like, oh gosh, where did I put that? What did I do with it, right? So there's a lot in the speaker coordination that has to happen. Networking and matchmaking. And I don't mean, we're not going to find you a wife, I'm sorry. But we're not going to be tender. But you want to know people that are interested in the same things that you're interested in, right? So how do you find those like-minded people? How do you find the people that maybe have certifications as a Slack administrator? I don't have one of those yet. So if you're a Slack administrator, I really want to hear your information. Did you watch the presentation a couple of weeks ago on Slack and all the new things that had come out? And I'm like, yes, if we had had that, that would have made this job easier. So they're improving it every time. Sponsor visibility. As much as you hate those sponsors that everybody wants your name and email and they spam you for months after you go to an event, if it weren't for those sponsors, we would not be able to have any of the community events that we have. So we need to be sure that they are getting some sort of return on their investment. And what better way than just having access to the people who are attending, right? Not to be pushy, not to be forceful, but to have a channel of their own and say, hey, here's what we do. If you're interested, come by and talk to us, that sort of thing. So real-time updates and announcements. That happens on a regular basis, right? So, something's going on, nobody showed up for this event, and, this particular session, and the speaker's looking kind of pitiful, and you're like, oh, don't forget, Melissa Hildy's session is, in the Architect Vista this afternoon at 3 o'clock. Be sure and be there. So you can send those out immediately and notify people. So those were the core event jobs to be done. Just before you forget, right? Anybody have any thoughts about, is there another big block that we missed? Not offhand? Okay, that's fine. As we go through it, you may think of some more ideas. So, we started mapping the Slack capabilities, right, to the event needs. And actually, I think we did this the other way around, if you want to really say the truth about it. Because we literally went through the app, who will not be named, and picked out all the things that we liked about it, that it did well, and how would we translate that to Slack. And amazingly, it was a pretty simple one-to-one translation almost, right? Another point that this particular app that people are paying $6,000 for, it doesn't integrate to Salesforce at all. There's no connection. So if you want that data in your Salesforce org, you literally have to download it into an Excel spreadsheet and import it to Salesforce. Obviously Slack's not that problem. So from a UX standpoint, and this was what was really important to me, right? We didn't want to rebuild the app because we didn't like the app. And we really wanted to use Slack, so let's orchestrate its strengths rather than try and work against it. right? Sometimes we get so afraid of change that we try to force something else into the box that we had before. Have you ever seen that happen? I literally had a customer who told me verbatim, we don't want to rebuild whatever their customer service platform was when we do it in Salesforce. And as we did it, that's exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted to exactly rebuild it in Salesforce, which is crazy. So because it's a familiar UI, because you know how to use Slack, it lightened the load. The learning curve is much less. And then this was really based on community, on people, right? Rather than on the event itself. So what changes? For the attendees and for the organizers, what we really liked was that you could stay where the relationships already exist, right? If you know people in Slack, you meet them at the event, you categorize them that way. I don't know about you all, but I know several people in this room, right? I don't remember where the first place I met you was. I might not even remember your name. I'll hug your neck and say, hello, I'm so excited to see you, but I can't remember your name. So this app, being in Slack, would give you where you first met that person, right, Nonprofit Dreamin', or where you reconnected with them, their name, their photo, what a concept, right? Rather than have to go to LinkedIn and do a DM, which we all know, sorry to say we all know. If you DM me in LinkedIn, I will answer you eventually, I promise. So we could really manage the engagement, right? And not just trying to keep all the processes straight, right? There wasn't a lot because all the information was in Salesforce, and that's where our source of truth was, and Slack was just the interface to be able to work through that. So I told you I'm into UX, and I told you the question I texted to my friend Marisa, and I thought, how can we make that happen? What should have been the case? I thought, why would we not use AI to do that very thing, right? So use conversational AI as the interface, rather than have to hunt and click and peck. And I don't know about you all, but if you're on your phone, suddenly things get tiny and whomper-jawed and all out of proportion, and it's really difficult to find things sometimes. So we started thinking about changing from clicking, right, to asking, to talking. That's what you do. That's what you do on text messages. That's what you do in a conversation. That's what you're used to doing on a daily basis. And so why can AI not do that? If you're like me, I'll think, okay, I remember her name was Elizabeth, and she spoke on AI, and I met her in Charlotte. None of y'all can remember. So, but you can ask AI, help me, who was this person? Who did I meet? And come back with that answer. That's not something you can do when you're trying to search and click and go through all of the hoops and links. And so that was kind of the start of the thought process behind this. So the event agent architecture. You can see we want that natural language input. I'll tell you one thing that we found out very quickly at the event itself. People have a difficult time with change sometimes, right? So even if it's good change, even if it's easier just to ask, what session should I be attending, it's more difficult for them because it's different. So there were several things that we need to have more context awareness of, and part of the iterations that we want to do. Have you ever tried to look at a list of things in Slack? Have you done that? Slack's not got a lot of real estate, so it's kind of hard to see, and you want like a whole web page to see a schedule. And Slack doesn't normally operate that way. We did see in the new things that are out how we can utilize that, but that was one of the challenges. Most people are not accustomed to asking, is there a session on Python? They're used to looking at a list of things and choosing the things that they want to be involved in. So that was a learning curve for us. But we did actually work it so that the response could be surfaced in Slack threads or in DMs. Because in my experience, if you've got that question, 10 other people have the same question. So if you ask it in a channel, like you're in the speaker channel, what time is the speaker dinner tonight? Because you may be in a different time zone. I wasn't sure until I showed up here what time I'm supposed to be right here. It's that bad. So other people may have that question too. On the other hand, the question about her name's Elizabeth, she's blonde, and she's from Charlotte, you probably want to do that in a DM, right? And so to be able to direct message, and we named it Evie, after Stephen Colbert's wife, Evie the event agent. So several different ways to work with the agent itself. And I like when it talks about personalization without fragmentation, right? That's a pet peeve of mine, is to have to go 15 different places and work in different environments and find different things and have to sign in every time. I don't know about you all, but I probably have 15 email addresses that are active right now, and I can't remember all the passwords for them, and I can't even remember which email address I used to register, for TDX, as opposed to which email address I used to submit to speak at TDX. It's like, how do I go back and log in somewhere, right? So in Slack, it knows who you are, right? You don't have to say, this is Melissa, tell me what my agenda is, because it already knows that you're Melissa and this is the agenda that you've already chosen. So that was important to me, not to have to go through that every single time. So the human-centered automation, and again, I think this has been one of the biggest challenges with Salesforce since I started using it in 2008, is the user interface, right? I hear so often the complaints about low user adoption. Why do you think that is? I don't think it's because Salesforce doesn't do what people want it to do. I think it's because it looks difficult, it looks scary. I was asked about the Agentforce Vibes this morning in the keynote, and I said, I don't write code anymore. I haven't in 40 years. So it looks scary to me. It looks like you need to know code and be able to write at least Apex, if not Python and JavaScript and all those other languages I don't do. So it has to look and be simple to really get that user adoption at the level that you want it to. Did anybody in here use Heroku Vibes when it was out? Super simple interface. I used it a lot and loved it. And they tell me it's not that much different than Agentforce Vibes. It was simply a matter of how it looked and how comfortable I felt with it. So removing that friction, right? Automating the logistics. Let people sign up for their own sessions for the things that they want to do, be able to see all of that. Elevate the conversation. We had, after Nonprofit Dreamin', we had Einstein plushies that were part of our goodie bag that we sent home with everybody. And one young woman's dog fell in love with her Einstein plushie. And so, 3 days after the event, she posted a picture and everybody started talking about this cute dog that loved the Einstein. It was one of those bonding moments, community moments, right, that you want to continue after the event. And then, of course, keeping humans in the loop, which I still think that's important. I don't think we can put the AI genie back in the bottle. I think it's out to stay. But I do think we're at the point still where we don't want it to do anything particularly autonomous at this point, not without a human in the loop. So what I want to show you, if I can, is actually the way this looked and worked in Slack. I don't know if you can envision it. I'm a very visual person. It helps me tremendously to see it. So we're going to see if we can actually do this. Let's see. Open my Slack app here. So, and this was our Nonprofit Dreamin' Slack. You see Eddie here. She was a little bumblebee, right? And literally, so because the event's over, it's not as easy to do the actual things that are happening. But these were questions that I asked during the event itself. Let me see if I can find my later. So, for example, Kate Russell was from National Geographic, and I wanted to be sure to meet her. And so I said, what time is Kate Russell speaking? She's presenting Start at the End, How National Geographic Engineers Impact Today, Thursday, March 26th at 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time in the Silverman Pavilion. That's exactly the information I needed to know at that exact moment to be able to go and find her, right? You could ask her to pull up an agenda, right? So things that you wanted to add to your event. What's on the agenda for Thursday? It was a 2-day conference, Thursday and Friday. You could add things to your agenda. You could remove things from your agenda. You could look at the description, open it so that if you needed more information, stop drowning in bad data. What is that? What is she really talking about there? I want to see more. Add it to your agenda. If you added it to your agenda, it would also then ask you if you wanted to add it to your calendar. What a concept. I don't know about you all, but if my calendar doesn't ping me and tell me to do something, I can't guarantee it's going to happen, right? So, when you're on the plane on the way to the event and you're trying to do things, then, and this particular, adds to the calendar, right, with all the appropriate information. Super simple to use. So, let me get back to my Slack. We also set up, so you know how your badge here, if you scan it, it gives you the LinkedIn, right? And that's great. We can all connect to each other. But again, I go back to the fact that I don't remember things. And one of the things, especially for sponsors, right? If you are standing there in a booth all day long and you meet 300 people and you're trying to remember the 10 people that were really engaged and interested in what you were talking to them about and differentiate them among all the rest of the people, how do you do that? And I don't have a way to show you because we did the expiring QR codes so that nobody could, attack and spam and do all that sort of thing. But it would open on your phone just using your camera that say this person, right? And here's their LinkedIn if you want to connect there. Give you a place to make a note about that person while you're standing right there. We need to invite Melissa to Ginger Force. All the redheads that need to be a Ginger Force. And it would save it to your Slack, right? So when you go back and look, let me see if I can find one. Here's one. So you see, I just connected with Hope Adair. I didn't add a note to this particular one, but it gave me her LinkedIn, it gave me her email, it gave me her profile. So I had all that information saved in my DM with Evie in Slack. And at the end, I could actually go back and download a CSV file, right? So maybe, if I'm an ISV partner, I probably have my own Salesforce org, and I really want to get those leads in there. How do I do that? That's the way you do it. Let me check one more thing. The other piece of Evie that we had was the reminders, right? So you signed up for a session. Evie would remind you before that session what time, when you're supposed to be there, that it was coming up. So if you're like me, you've probably forgotten you signed up for that one, but it would tell you. Any questions offhand about the app itself and what we did in Slack? Everybody's really quiet. I know it's late in the day. We're all right, let's see if we can get back to the presentation itself. Yay. So, actually, we're, I think, close to the end. No. Sorry, that one, I don't know why that one popped up in there. But, so what we were really trying to accomplish, I think we did, right? Events that don't end on day 3. So just because you go home tomorrow afternoon, you can still connect with and talk to the people that you met here. Wouldn't that be great? Not have to hunt them down on LinkedIn, hope they'll answer your email. You probably didn't get their cell phone number. I'll give you mine. Text me if you want to find me, but most people don't these days. Measurable engagement inside real communities. This was a big deal because we could actually see the kind of interaction that participants were having with sponsors, with speakers. So what I didn't show you in Slack, for each session, there was a Slack channel, right? So the speaker could post questions there, talk to people one-on-one about the presentation itself, share their slide deck if they wanted to, if they had a survey somewhere they wanted. Great interaction there. The same thing for sponsors. Each sponsor had their own channel, right? And they could interact with folks. So The AI part of it was just part of it, right? But it became the amplifier, not a gatekeeper. So, and that was kind of our question. That's what I'd really like to leave you with. I mean, if your community already lives in Slack, why doesn't your event? Why would you not do that? And I'd love to hear things that you all think would be difficult or would be the reason that you would say, no, we don't want to use Slack as an event app. We want to do something different. And actually, the pictures here, I changed the thank you pictures because Marissa Hamilton is on top there, right beside the Salesforce. That's my friend that runs Cactus Force, that I feel like I need to credit her with this inspiration.